Good morning, America.
Welcome to American Sunrise.
Whether it's culture,
we have breaking news to share with you.
Politics.
President Trump is joining us live now from Florida.
We've got you covered.
This is what it looks like to be a patriot.
We have to protect the American family.
The American dream is still alive.
I'm David Brody.
I'm Terrance.
And I'm Dr. Gina.
Welcome back, everybody, to the second hour of American Sunrise. I'm David Brody, coming to you from D.C. Let's bring in Emily Finn. She's in for Dr. G down in West Palm. T. Bates in our Denver newsroom. Good morning to both of you. Boy, another day, another government shutdown. Not much of an end in sight, but you know, T. Bates, Democrats better not play around here because, and they are playing around because basically President Trump is just going to let Russ vote go wild, if you will, and just let him do what he needs to do, not just with budget cuts, but layoffs and all that stuff.
Yeah, and while in the big picture that may save our government some money, it may streamline our government, the reality is, David, and I was literally just writing something on this as we were coming into the show, I'm curious how this is ultimately going to play out in the midterm elections. Are voters going to see it as the Schumer shutdown, or since Senate Republicans have the majority, are voters ultimately going to blame this on Republicans? I don't know the answer to that, but I think it has got to be a critical question that's being asked in the halls of Congress, Emily.
You know, guys, all I say every time we see another government shutdown, I feel like this always happens. It's like, can we all just get along? Can we all just come together and get along and get things done? But no, like you said, David, I think there is not going to be an end in sight anytime soon.
No, we cannot get along, and that's been proven time and time again. And by the way, when I say nor should we, I don't mean that we shouldn't get along, but we shouldn't get along. And what I mean by that is that, look, if the policy difference is there, and there are plenty of them, then, you know, you need to stand firm on your principles. We shouldn't just get along just to get along. You know, I mean, that's not the principle here. I mean, you have to work across the aisle. That's fine, but you can't sacrifice your principles. And the problem is that both parties play politics, and Americans are sick and tired of it.
Compromise is extremely important, though.
No, absolutely. But I think
yes, compromises, but not compromising your principles. Yes, I agree.
Yes. Agreed. And I'll just add this before we kind of wrap up this part of the conversation. The reality is the government is closed, and so there's no negotiation that is happening right now to potentially reach a compromise, simply because Democrats are digging in and saying, we're not going to talk at all unless you do this and this and this, and then we can have a conversation. That's not compromise. That's not really negotiating in good faith. We'll talk a bit more about that here in just a little bit, guys. But another big story, President Trump has the green light now to send National Guard troops into Portland, Oregon, despite protests from local officials there. A 3-judge panel on the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals ruled on Monday that the president can take control of the Oregon National Guard and deploy troops in response to protests that have damaged federal property there in Oregon and even threatened ICE agents. While the court's ruling is a significant victory for the administration, President Trump still wants the Supreme Court to weigh in on his authority to send troops into crime-ridden Democratic-led cities. His attempts to do so have been met with court challenges, most recently in Chicago, where an appeals court ruled against the president's push for troop deployment there. Crisis averted as police arrest a would-be mass shooter at Atlanta airport just before he was allegedly set to go on a shooting rampage at the world's busiest airport. Investigators say the 49-year-old described his plan to shoot up Atlanta Hartsfield Airport while streaming on social media, leading his family to report him to police.
We're here today briefing you on a success and not a tragedy, because a family saw something and said something.
Atlanta's police chief also reporting that officers found an AR-15 rifle and 27 rounds of ammunition in the suspect's flatbed truck, which, as you can see here, was parked right outside the terminal. Looks like it was probably parked illegally as well. The guy is charged with making terroristic threats, criminal attempt to commit aggravated assault, possession of a firearm during the commission of a felony, and possession of a firearm by a felon. He remains in jail this morning, but could have his first court appearance as soon as today. Part of the White House is a demolition zone at the moment, as crews will be back to the job of tearing down the East Wing to begin building President Trump's ballroom today. The East Wing is part of the White House that used to house the First Lady's offices, a theater, as well as a visitor's entrance. 47's ballroom project is slated to cost at least $250 million and will reportedly be paid for by donors and the President Trump's personal funds. The commander-in-chief already saying that the new ballroom will be the finest in the country. The current East Wing was erected in 1942 and is now getting a major facelift, as you can see. All right, folks, let's get a quick check of your forecast. Meteorologist Tracy Anthony joining us with more. Tracy, good morning to you. We were talking in our last hour about people potentially getting a personal forecast from you if they go to the bottom of your screen. Let's bring Tracy back up. If they go to the bottom of your screen, there was a QR code that we had at the bottom. They can log there and get in touch with the folks over at Weather Nation. There we have it again. So have you gotten any information, any requests for this personal forecast? Again, I'm hoping that we get something for like Podunk, Iowa, someplace that's all the way out in the middle of nowhere. But what have you gotten?
There was definitely a handful of places that we had to look up and make sure, we could find them on a map just to make sure they were legitimate. But, even doing national weather, there's a lot of little towns you don't always think about. So that's what we want to do. We want to highlight some of you guys where you may not always get your 7-day forecast on national TV. So Westville, Illinois, this was from Lawrence. You are dealing with a low pressure center that's working on through. You're going to avoid the rain, which is great news, but it's going to feel a lot like fall. And look at those overnight temperatures dropping down below freezing by Friday morning and then tracking a chance for some rain into the weekend. But it's going to be a pretty nice fall week. Heading out to Bogata, Texas, they're going to stay nice and dry. They've actually cooled down a bit as well. They're kind of on the south end of this cold front, but rain for the weekend for them. And in Sharpsburg, Georgia, it is going to be a beautiful fall week. So we do have a lot of quiet spots across the country. It's the northern tier of the country that's waking up to some scattered rain showers, but all of us will feel that fall chill. So our temperatures finally dialing back to what they should feel like for mid-October. Now areas along the Gulf and into Phoenix, we're still in the 90s. So there are still a few hot spots, Terrance, across the country.
All right, Tracy. So Bogata, Texas, not Bogota, Colombia. One of my favorite all-time cities, not Cairo, Egypt, but Cairo, Illinois. It's one of my favorites. I love that. Cairo, Illinois, not Cairo. So good to see you, Tracy. Appreciate it.
With this,
I know it, right? I'm looking forward to some of the other unique towns that you get asked for forecasts from. Thanks, Tracy. We'll talk soon.
Yep.
All right, folks, remember, all of you watching right now, you can scan that QR code that was at the bottom of your screen. There it is again. Join the Weather Nation family, log on, and you never know, you might even see a forecast for your community on here as well. All right, let's get you back over to David. David, good afternoon. Unfortunately, suburban Maryland, that's way too broad. We can't get any forecast for suburban Maryland. You'd actually have to tell us exactly where you live for us to hook you up. And I doubt.
Yeah, and that won't be happening, though I can tell you in suburban Maryland, the forecast morally is always rain with a forecast of more rain. All right, T. Bates. FBI Director Kash Patel says the FBI is undergoing a refocus with new civil liberty protections being implemented. Now, this is coming after the agency collected millions of phone records from Republican lawmakers and White House officials during the January 6th investigation. Patel says his team has, quote, ended that regime and is working to return the Bureau to its core mission. Well, joining us now with the details is the editor-in-chief for justthenews.com. That'd be our good friend, John Solomon. John, tell us more. I mean, you spoke to the FBI director and his plans for the Bureau recently. We're curious to know more. Good morning.
Yeah, listen, a refocus on civil liberties, which is something that we haven't seen really in the last decade, whether it was the violations at the FISA court, cheating at the FISA court to spy on the Trump campaign, or the abuses that we've seen in just gathering records in large numbers, trying to look for a crime. As you know, our country was founded on the notion that we have a Fourth Amendment protection against invasion into our privacy unless there is a specific allegation. But what we've seen in the last decade is much more moves towards general warrants. What do we mean by that? Well, that's something that our founding fathers rejected, because Great Britain used to do that. And that means you get all your data, then you try to look for the crimes. We don't believe in that system in America. Our founding fathers didn't. But in the last decade, what you've begun to see is a significant amount of data mining that does broad requests for information, then tries to rifle through and try to find the crime or find the person that might be connected to a crime. This is a moment for Congress and the FBI to get together and potentially end that sort of sweeping production. Over the last 2 weeks, we've learned of 30 million lines of data that Congress got by a subpoena with no judicial review. They just issued a subpoena and got records of people calling the White House, 30 million lines of records. We also saw 8 senators and 1 House member get, as David mentioned, their phone records taken. And there's a belief, though we don't have it confirmed yet, but one of the things we're trying to find out, did those 30 million records after Congress got them, did they get transferred to the FBI? We know that Adam Kinzinger was talking to the FBI about that and suggesting the FBI look at the data. We do not have an answer yet from the FBI whether they obtained that data. I think that's going to be the next major civil liberties question that we're going to face in the next few days. The good news is Kash Patel intends and has already put an end to a lot of this sweeping data gathering.
John, I'm curious about some of the conversations you've had with lawmakers on Capitol Hill, specifically in the U.S. Senate. Given that there's this narrow Republican majority, is there concern in the conversation that you're having about that majority even dwindling more or being in threat? There's this headline from Just the News over the weekend. You guys were reporting basically that a series of shakeups could complicate the GOP's hold on the upper chamber. Republicans currently, of course, occupy about 53 seats in the Senate. But the reality is this government shutdown, can't be good for Republicans. It's probably not good for Democrats either. But uncertainty is never a thing of comfort for anybody who's running for office.
Yeah, so let's call the dynamics as they are right now. So the Democrats have put Governor Mills, Janet Mills, in Maine to go up against Susan Collins. That's the most vulnerable Republican this session. So there's a possibility there that Democrats could pick up a seat. But if you look at the dynamics, Scott Rasmussen just had a poll out there. If you look at the dynamics over the last couple of weeks, you see Republican popularity growing and Democrat popularity dropping. In fact, Republicans are now more popular than Democrats. That's very unusual in a mid-year term when you have an all-Republican town. When you have a one-party town, you see the one party that's in power start to drop and the opposition party rise. But we're seeing the opposite effect right now. And I think that what's going on is even though the calendar, the map are usually historically in Democrats' favor, Democrats' behavior, Democrats' positioning has hurt them. And the fact that the Republicans rose during the middle of the shutout, that poll was done during the shutout, that's a real sign that Democrat strategy may not be registering with the American public and potentially undercutting their ability to win in 2026.
John Solomon, great to have you as always. Appreciate your time. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Johnny J. or Johnny S.
Oh, wow. There's a lot of stuff going on there. All right. It sounds like a rap star. Coming up, Democrats in Congress take issue with how the White House is keeping our service members paid in the midst of the ongoing Schumer shutdown. It's another element we're going to discuss. And so much more when American Sunrise continues.